Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful September the 18th, 2019. Ground of Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, I've been watching a heated race in the Central Division of baseball between the Cubs and the Cardinals. I mean, the winner of that, Charlton, will be in the playoffs. The loser's going to have to sit home and wait, and they're going to miss the playoff berth. But baseball is exciting, even with all the football we got playing.
Yeah, it really is. Hold on. I've never thought that you would say something's exciting as compared to football, Big C. Did I hear that right?
Oh, Charlton, they've been scoring at a record tilt with the Chicago Cubs. I mean,
yeah.
Each one of these teams is on a torrid tear. The Cardinals have won 7 of 8. The Cubs have won 5 consecutive games, Charlton.
Yeah. These
are two teams that don't want to go home and spend the fall in the cold.
I understand that. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I know there's a lot going on. The A's, they're in the thick of things over here in Northern California. It's amazing, in Northern California, the one team that can compete for the chance to even get into the playoffs, maybe even a chance at an ALCS, that's Oakland. But maybe some of their fans haven't heard Big C because a lot of fans haven't shown up. But all over the country, there's a lot of good baseball being played. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it is, Charlton. It's an exciting time of the year. Most of the teams are already set that are going to be in the playoffs. Even, especially when you look at the AL, Charlton, you know that the Astros and the Cubs are in, Charlton, already. The Minnesota Twins should get there. They're the best home run hitting team in the major leagues. Nobody wants to play them in the postseason because when you talk about the Twins, they got 5 players in their starting lineup that have hit 30 home runs plus this year. Charlton, think about that. That's murderer's row. Everybody talks about the 27 Yankees.
Yeah.
Had that killer lineup. But the Minnesota Twins here in the modern day era have 30 players in their active roster that have hit 30-plus home runs. Not only that, Charlton, they have another 3 players that have hit in excess of 20 home runs.
That's amazing because people talk about the ball not being juiced or baseball players not being juiced like they were about 2 decades ago, Big C, but it's all fair love and war. I want to say Big C Sports is brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate our growth. I always, as we talk about many times, there's so many issues with mental health coming on in the United States of America. People are talking about it. Now there's even an article that talked about women in their first experience with sexuality is forced. I mean, that's horrible because most men don't even have to think about that. So I know we celebrate our veterans. For anybody going through issues, when people say, how you doing? Quit saying I'm fine, because that's a facade. If you need any kind of help, there's an 800 hotline. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. It's not just veterans, Big C. For anybody who needs help, and you're the reason we announce that every show. Why is it so important to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's important, Charlton, because it's a part of the American fabric now. When we talk about mental illness in this country, Charlton, I know that's what the administration wants to use every time we have a mass shooting in this country, is they want to say the people were mentally ill. Charlton, those people are not mentally ill.
No.
Those people are just disgruntled.
Yeah.
And when you look at that situation. But, for those people who are going through serious mental issues in this country, Charlton, they often have no one to talk to, and there's a stigmatism that they're weak and they're vulnerable and they're an embarrassment. A lot of people look at them in that light. And so instead of turning to help, Charlton, they turn against themselves physically.
Yeah.
And so by having the National Suicide Prevention Hotline out there, Charlton, it is a segue for many people to start seeking help.
Yeah.
And you seek it with anonymity. No one knows who you are.
Yeah.
And these people are not prejudgmental like society is, Charlton. They always want to cast a veil of darkness over somebody who is suffering through issues.
Yeah.
We've been taught as Americans, be strong, get over it.
Yep.
Men don't cry. Little boys don't cry. They're just as vulnerable as anybody else in society,
They sure
Charlton.
are.
And when we think about the bullying that goes on in this country, I know the First Lady has her program talk about BS, anti-bullying.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything from the First Lady or any of her spokespeople since she launched this campaign.
No.
So she needed a photo op. She launched this campaign, and she's disappeared, Charlton.
Yep.
Because she lives with the biggest bully in America every day.
Yeah.
So how can you talk about be best and you can't even stop it at home? You advocate for bullying in this country.
Yeah.
So as we have our children that go through this every day, Charlton, and teen suicide is at an epic rate in America. People don't want to address it because they think it's an embarrassment to their family. It's not. The life that you spoke about that you lost may help the next life that may not be lost, Charlton. And our veterans desperately need help every day. When you see a veteran and people say thank you, no, you need to do more than thank you. You need to spend time and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that they lack the most. And when they feel left out, Charlton, these are the measures that they turn to. So that National Suicide Prevention Hotline, Charlton, is a great thing for Americans to recognize every day and put it in your phone.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, give it to somebody else to use it.
Big C, that makes so much sense. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or text 838-255. That's 838-255. It's just amazing. As you open your mind to more things, you tend to see more of it, Big C. I know you're talking about a lot of things in baseball tonight. A lot of good things happen in the baseball world. The Angels are at the Yankees. That's a great battle for the East Coast to see a West Coast power coming in there. The Blue Jays at the Orioles. We have the Mariners at the Pirates. And I know the Seattle Mariners jumped out to a fast start, but now everybody's thinking about the Seattle Seahawks up north, Big C. And then you have the Tigers at Indians, the Giants at Red Sox. And I want to come back to that game, but the Phillies at the Braves, Big C, the White Sox at the Twins. You have the Padres at the Brewers, the Cincinnati Reds at the Chicago Cubs. I guess that's called the Big C series, Big C. Those two good teams there, the Rangers at the Astros and the Rays at the Dodgers. Big C, I want to go back to Bochy because we talk about Prince, how he wanted to party like it's 1999. Well, now Bochy can party like it's 2019. He has one more win to get that win number 2,000. And a lot of people thought that it may come in Boston or Atlanta. But give me your feeling, because a lot of special things have happened on the East Coast with Bochy going back in town, with Mike Yastrzemski, and also at Fenway Park, his first career home, I think his first career game at Fenway Park, his 20th of the regular season in front of his grandfather, the Red Sox Hall of Famer Carl Yastrzemski, who also homered in his first game at Fenway Park, May 15th, 1961, and now Bochy can hit for his 2,000th win tonight. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about the historical significance of Mike Yastrzemski's home run last night in Boston.
Yeah.
His grandfather, one of the greatest Boston Red Sox of all time,
Ever.
Carl Yastrzemski, Charlton, who's now in baseball's Hall of Fame, hit a home run in his first game there at Fenway Park.
Yeah.
And so you think about him being in the stands. He was on the field with his grandson prior to the game.
Amazing.
His grandson started out in the Baltimore Orioles organization, and this is the team that's given up the most home runs in baseball history this season.
Yep.
And it also lasted in home runs, and he couldn't get a sniff when he was in the Orioles organization.
Right.
So you wonder why the Orioles organization is doing so bad this year.
Yeah.
They let go of all their young stars.
Yep.
Mike Yastrzemski was picked up by San Francisco.
Yeah.
Here's a young man living a dream, Charlton. He grew up watching his grandfather play this great game of baseball.
Yeah.
And now to be able to go back to the hollow grounds where his grandfather started in the American League, Charlton, for a couple decades, and to hit his first home run in that park, Charlton, in his first at bat.
Yeah.
What a memorable moment to have your family in the stands and have your grandfather in the stands cheering you on like you once cheered him on.
Isn't that amazing?
And the thing about it, Charlton, his grandfather had a ticket from the first game that Mike attended there at Fenway Park. So he still had that ticket in his pocket. Mike held on to that. That's a
amazing.
wonderful, memorable thing.
Yeah.
But you talk about Bruce Bochy and the San Francisco Giants being out there, Charlton. This was an epic battle all night long. This game lasted 5 hours and 54 minutes.
Yep.
Think about that. This basically lasted 2 games.
Yeah.
5 hours and 54 minutes was the length of this game.
Yep.
They did the 7th inning stretch twice in this game, Charlton. They sung it twice.
Yeah.
They sung it in the 7th inning, and they sung it in the 14th inning. This game went 15 innings before finally being won by the Giants on a leadoff on a single in the 15th to drive in that leading run.
Yeah.
But you think about both of these teams, Charlton, put out a major league record of 24 pitchers last night.
Wow.
24 pitchers pitched last night in this epic battle that lasted 5 hours and 54 minutes.
Wow.
So I know there's been a lot of cry in Major League Baseball about a time clock.
Yeah.
That baseball is taking too long. So you have to ask yourself, a game that went basically 6 hours last night, Charlton, is that too long for anybody to sit in the stands or even play the game? And you got to understand, the subway system had shut down in Boston before this game had ended.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I just talked about high school football with Mater Dei of Santa Ana, ranked number 1 in the country. They played St. Francis out of Maryland, ranked number 2 at the time, just last week. East Coast time, that game ended about 1:20 a.m. And we talk about safety for people, for youth, and then older, professional players need that too. I think they should at least consider more of the time clock. So with Bochy, if he can get that 2,000, it's a shame it's not happening in San Francisco, but sometimes you take it where you can take it, Big C. I think it's great. It's great theater for Boston. The fact that these 2 simultaneous events can happen at Fenway Park, and we were just talking yesterday, Big C, about ballparks that really they're like the prodigal ballpark for the Major League Baseball. Would it be Yankee Stadium where the Oakland's torn down? Could it be Wrigley Field in Chicago, or could it be Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine? There's something about Fenway. I hope they never tear it down, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's one of those iconic, statuesque figures, Charlton, when you talk about one of the marvels of sports.
Yeah.
And that's what Fenway Garden represents. That's what Wrigley Field represents. I think with modern technology that we have now, Charlton, there's no need to get rid of these old, hobbles of stadiums.
Never.
There's such a fixture in the community and a way of life in those cities, is that you can always modernize things, Charlton. And with the engineering that we have in America nowadays, Charlton, you can go internally into a facility and change every bit of the structure without tearing down the outside of it. And Wrigley Field has started doing that already, Charlton, with the revamping that they did of the outfield bleachers and the scoreboard, adding more seats outside the stadium across the street, Charlton, on top of some apartment buildings. But what we have when these baseball organizations and these facilities are part of the community, there's some parts of history in America that you want to hold on to. And that's what the people of Chicago and Boston are doing, Charlton. Everything else in those cities have been replaced, from the football stadiums to the basketball arenas. But those stadiums at Fenway Park and Wrigley Field, Charlton, they're synonymous with those 2 long, struggling organizations. If you think about the length of time that they went without winning World Series, that was part of their history and their lore, Charlton, is that they wanted to make sure that they won again while those facilities still existed.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying. Just leave them. Some things are meant to stay forever, Big C. So hopefully Bochy gets his win tonight. If you're a Giants fan, Boston would rather have them do it in the South, Big C, but it's all fair in love and war. When you think about Hbcu for the Toronto Blue Jays, he hit it for the cycle last night, 17 years after his father, Craig Biggio, hit for the cycle with the Houston Astros. Isn't that amazing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Last night was just one of those epic history-making nights in baseball. And for baseball fans and purists, Charlton, it couldn't get much better than that. When you think about Craig Biggio 17 years ago, hitting for the cycle as a member of the Houston Astros. And then his son comes up and does it 17 years later, Charlton, as a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. You talk about father and son meshing, being on the same page, Charlton, being a part of history. That's something that never goes away. I mean, all of, everybody that plays the professional sports, their whole goal is to make it to a championship and eventually the Hall of Fame for immortality. But to have your son replicate something that you had done that was part of one of the rarest feats in baseball, hitting for the cycle, and do it 17 years after you've done it. Your son had a chance to witness it while he was a child and
Yep.
you were a young man playing this game, Charlton.
Yep.
And now, as an elder statesman, you're able to sit up and watch your son replicate the same thing that you had done. Just like with Carl Yastrzemski, sitting up and watching his grandson. And we know how grandparents feel about their grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
Because they forget about the parents all of a sudden.
What kid-
they got a
what-
grandkid, and the parent is like, who are you? You know, because that
Yeah.
grandkid gets everything. Think
Yeah.
about the time that Carl Yastrzemski spent with his grandson, teaching him how to hold a bat and
Yeah.
how memorable that is.
That's
And
amazing.
here is his grandfather, one of the greats of all time in baseball, spending time with him, teaching him the fundamentals of the game, and then years later, his grandson comes and hit a home run in the same ballpark that they first hit their
That's
first
amazing.
major league home runs in Fenway Park. And now you get this with the Hbcu family, Charlton, that
Yeah.
the son comes and replicates what the dad did 17 years later.
I just think that's amazing. Sometimes the universe lines things up, and it's just great for people to see that, and that's why it's important for grandparents and their children and grandchildren to go out and do some things together, and I think sports brings people together. Think about another great thing. The Minnesota Twins, they became the first team in Major League Baseball history to have 5 players with 30-plus home runs in a season, and we still got about 2 weeks to go, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just a great story when you think about where baseball stands today.
Yeah.
With the number of players who were able to go up and dominate at the plate. I know everybody's constantly talked about that baseball is juiced.
Yep.
There's something going on with the
Something's
baseball,
juiced.
Charlton. Just like when
Yeah.
Barry Bonds was playing.
Yeah.
You got to put the bat on the ball.
Yep.
And the Minnesota Twins have been able to put the bat on the ball better than any team in baseball this year in hitting it out of the park. I mean, you got the New York Yankees right on their heel.
Yeah.
They started out the season at a record pace. Everybody thought that the Yankees would set the major league record with the number of big bats that they had in the lineup. Not a lot of attention was paid to Minnesota because of where they are. They're not in a major market.
No, they're not.
But they play there at Target Field in Minneapolis, Charlton, and there's been nothing but excitement for the home fans this year.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even also when you think about other markets, too, that are not the biggest, not the sexiest markets, but I think it's so important that you bring this up. The Washington Nationals, because we all love the long ball and people can hit a home run, but think about the Washington Nationals. They became the first team in Major League Baseball history with 3 starting pitchers with 222-plus strikeouts in one season. You think about Strasburg, you think about Corbin, and then Max Scherzer. That's amazing because everybody loves when you hit a home run, Big C, but to have players that can come up and keep you from hitting the ball, that's amazing to have that many strikeouts from 3 players on the same team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when we look at all the specialty pitchers nowadays in Major League Baseball, Charlton, because pitchers go 5-6 innings and then they're yanked from the starting lineup.
Yep.
I know there was a game early in the year where Matt Scherzer refused to come out when
That's
Martinez went out, the manager, to pull him from the game. He said, no, I got this.
Yeah.
And he finished the game, Charlton. He got his team out of the inning. But when you sit there and you think about what we've talked about thus far about Major League Baseball and the record-setting trend that has occurred just last night, Charlton, with the Yastrzemskis matching the home run of his grandfather. We talk about the Hbcu's hitting for the cycle 17 years after his dad had done it. We talk about the epic home run pace that the Minnesota Twins are on this year. And now we're talking about the strikeouts of the Washington Nationals. No team in Major League history has had 3 pitchers, starting pitchers with 222-plus strikeouts on the season. And you think about it, we still got 14 games to go, Charlton, and so they're going to increase those numbers of where they have as far as the strikeout record.
Yeah.
But this is the Washington Nationals, the team that everyone thought it was over with once Bryce Harper's left.
Yeah.
There are other great talents on that team, and Martinez has done a great job managing the team, and we wish him the best on his health struggles, Charlton. He was hospitalized 2 nights ago with a heart condition, and wishing him all the best, pull out of that and come on back and manage his team. But the Washington Nationals, they're in the hunt for that wild card chase in the National League, but those pitchers are keeping them in the hunt.
Yeah, I really love when guys step up to the challenge. In fact, when you think about stepping up to the challenge, Big C, and we love our professional athletes, I think about the players like Steph Curry. When you think about Team USA, they finished 7th in the World Basketball Championship, 2020 Olympics now on the horizon. And Steph Curry says that he wants to play guys like LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, and many others, the USA has to put together an all-star cast to defeat the world and show its dominance. And I know a lot of players, maybe they feel about muscle fatigue and they have too much money to care about the country, but they do care, and it would be great to see our best go against the world's best. That's my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at this World Championship that was just played, Charlton, it's called the World Championship.
Yeah.
It's a little different than what the Olympics represents to every country in the world.
Yeah.
And when you think about since the Olympics started accepting NBA players back in the 90s to play in the Olympics, Charlton, how the landscape of Olympic basketball had changed. The U.S. had been down and had lost in the Olympics, and they no longer wanted to deal with that any longer, Charlton, and they came out with that first all-star team that they put together that just ran through the world.
Yeah.
The U.S. has set up a world dominance as far as basketball. Yes, the world is catching up.
Yep.
But the U.S. needs to maintain that one dominance, Charlton, in basketball because it is a native game of the U.S.
Yeah.
And when you think about Steph Curry stepping forward and say, I want to participate and represent my country, you know great superstars like LeBron James, who's never played an Olympic, is biting at the bits to be a part of that. Then you got sharpshooters like James Harden that nobody can cover.
Nope.
I mean, the list will just grow as far as when you put together all-stars want to play with all-stars, and I think it's great. You know, you'll most likely have Mike Krzyzewski, the head coach from Duke, who has never lost an Olympic competition, Charlton, as the head coach of the U.S. team. But I think it's time, once again, for all our best in the NBA to get together and show the world that we still possess basketball dominance.
Well, I think that's true, and they'll do it too. And you just brought up something with Coach K. Remember they had that commercial back in the day called Coach Krzyzewski, Big C, because people couldn't say Krzyzewski, so they say Coach K. And thinking about coaches, which college football coach would you enjoy, say, a happy hour with or having a libation with? And you think about some of the coaches over the years, no matter who it might be, just a couple of guys that might come to mind, this Mike Van Gundy. You think about the great Dabo Swinney, Pat Fitzgerald, Nick Saban, Mike Leach up at Washington State. He might be one that you people might have a great time sitting down with. But I would also like to say Pete Carroll, because I think he's almost 70 years old, but he still acts like he's in his 30s, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you say college coaches, Charlton, those first five that you ran off were college coaches.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to sit down with a college coach and discuss philosophy, I'm going to sit down with Mike Leach. When you sit down with Mike Leach, now, you know, he's a philosophy major. He didn't major in PE or anything like that. He was a guy who majored in talking to people, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so when you sit down with him and even listen to him in his press conferences, Mike is not always talking football. He's talking angles, mental angles about life and about people.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. And so I can imagine once Mike chucks back a couple of cold ones, how even more insightful that he's going to become.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I look at Nick, I know what Nick is going to bring to the table. He's going to sit up there and with all the damn rings on his finger, you know, holding his hands down. He can't even kick the glass
like
up.
his commercial.
Dabo Swinney, young gun, you know, on the block now. He's the hottest thing in college football.
Yep.
But, you know, I go back to Mike Leach. When you want to understand the philosophy of the game of football, and this is a guy that is adapted to the times as he's gone through in coaching. He's not a guy that goes out and recruit young players, young quarterbacks to come in and play. He go take transfers, junior college kids, bring them in because he wants instant success now. He's changed his style from when he was at Texas Tech. But, I mean, sitting down with any college head coach, Charlton, would be a great anathema to sit there and pick their minds.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even going back to some of the old timers, I would be really interested in what it was like to talk to like guys like John McKay that coached USC, and Woody Hayes up at Ohio State, Bo Schembechler from back in the day, and Eddie Robinson down at Grambling University. There's so many great minds, Big C. Imagine, the great John Wood. Could you imagine? I don't know if Wooden would let his guys drink, though. They were too busy winning games. Big C.
Well, that's why, you know, you look at the modern coaches that's going right now, Charlton, because those are the guys that are young enough to sit there and be able to hold their liquor when they're having a conversation. Get some of those older guys, they might pass out after half a glass.
Yeah, and some of those older, good old boys, they like the moonshine too, so it's all fair love and war. I want to bring something up as we talk about things that are happening in society, and we love being a part of solutions. And it's one thing, as you start looking into things, and we talk about the history of black colleges, there are 107 colleges and universities in the United States of America defined by the U.S. Department of Education that are classified as historically black colleges and universities. You're going to hear more about this coming up in media soon, but the HBCs were established. They were established after the Civil War by missionaries and philanthropists from the North to create opportunities for African American students. Now, Congress in 1965 made the schools accredited, and it was designed to help the education of black Americans that were often excluded from white universities. And it's also responsible, for the most part, for the middle class in black America. Would you believe right now, Big C, that 20% of the students are Caucasian or non-black nationwide? In many of the schools, they have to diversify to stay economically solvent, while other schools are prospering with their sports programs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about universities, they were about education first. Sports came in secondary.
Yeah.
And it's about willing to go in and participate. Integration is not just siphoned off athletes from HBC schools, Charlton. It also siphoned off academics from HBC schools.
Yep.
They all wanted to go be a part of the mainstream. I mean, we focus on athletes because that's the most noticed part of the campus. But when you look at the African-American population on every campus in America, even schools like BYU, a Mormon school in Utah, and the University of Utah, Utah State, those schools in that state, Charlton, are loaded with minority students.
Yep.
So everybody is looking for a different genre, opportunity everywhere. They're looking to integrate. And so the HBCs, as you say, they have to accept all races in now, Charlton, just to gain an economic even playing field. And so not just as athletes, and if you look at some of the football programs, basketball programs, Charlton, they have white athletes on their basketball and football programs. I was watching a couple of white quarterbacks and kickers at some HBCs over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. They think it's all black. But it's important because when you talk about race and then big business in sports, you juxtapose that to many of the mainstream universities that participated in segregation prior to civil rights. And you have Brown versus Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, they're now intentionally recruiting black athletes to build up their athletic programs. And while most stadiums now, especially places in the South, they seat about 80,000 seats, Big C. And even with that, they're asking for more money to build even bigger facilities. And I think that's incredulous because oftentimes these programs, they found the gold mine in black student athletes. I just want to bring up this point because when you think about most large programs, they have $100 million plus athletic budgets. It's based on football and basketball, which is fueled by 75% black student athletes, which for the most part, they're not employees of the university, and they're help bringing in $100+ million for the schools. I want to ask you, because again, these black colleges were created after the Civil War. How did we get to this part where the schools that said, no, segregation now, segregation forever, like Governor Wallace down south, now they want to come after the black kid, and they're using the money to build bigger facilities, not get more tutoring. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's just like it is in society when you're seeing people want to move out of the ghetto and move up to the suburbs because they figure they have a better way of life. Whenever you go out and recruit a kid on the high school level to try to attract them to go to your major university, what you do is show them all the amenities and things that you can afford to give them versus anybody else. It's like dating. The guy who shows up in the old beat-up Volkswagen versus the guy who shows up in the new Corvette is going to get more attention. And that's what you look at when you talk about revenue generating at the major college level. When you talk about the Power 5 conferences, Charlton, you can take one team in a Power 5 conference, Charlton. Its athletic budget is more than an entire conference in an HBC. University. When we talk about the expansion that these universities have, Clemson 3 years ago spent $54 million upgrading their facility. LSU this past offseason spent $24 million just upgrading its locker room.
Wow.
Georgia's just allocated out $80 million to upgrade their facilities, and we talked about what the gate will be at this Georgia-Notre Dame game this next weekend, some $56 million plus that they're going to generate just on ticket sales alone. And so when you think about an HBC university, Charlton, and you're looking at every kid that wants to upgrade their lives in sport, and you say, okay, I'm going to be on national television, I'm going to travel via jet plane versus traveling by a bus, I'm going to live in an athletic dorm. I'm going to get a stipend. I know what I'm going to eat every day.
Yep.
I know I'm going to get top-line athletic gear. You're talking to 18-year-old kids, just like when you talk about these prep schools, Charlton, that funnel all these kids into colleges. Why do they go to those prep schools in high school?
Yeah.
Because they want a better opportunity, and so they go to this prep school where they get an added advantage. And that's the reason why the HBCs have suffered.
Yeah.
Everybody has stood around and watched the decline of the economic input into the HBCs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so until it matters to the government, Charlton, not only that's the government, but when you take all of these athletes and they go to one school, you look at Alabama. Alabama's second group on their roster can start at half the schools in this country and beat half the schools in the country that are not ranked in the top 50.
Yeah.
So when you think about the talent level, and the segue to get into the NFL now is to play at a Power 5 conference.
Yeah.
That's what kids are looking at.
That's amazing that we bring that up. And I think a solution in conclusion and talking about this with many people that it's really been top of the mind. And you'll see more mainstream programming coming up with HBCs. So in conclusion of the mainstream schools that we see on TV and throughout the week, we're going to see them, like you mentioned, Notre Dame and Georgia. Think about this as we're watching these games. A lot of these schools, they fought against the integration that's going to make them wealthy now. And when you think about student athletes and taking their talents and trying to make money, people have fought that too. About 75% of these student athletes are African American. The majority of schools, the vice presidents and the presidents, the deans of these programs, they're about 95% white. And the administrators, they still fight against it. And I think a solution is already being proposed. There's a senator, but because if you get TV money, Big C, if you get the TV money, then you have the money to do more. But I think a solution could be if you start taking some of these programs that don't graduate their kids and start taking away a scholarship, because if you don't have the academics, they take it away anyway. Would you think that would be a solution to make sure they start putting more money into making sure these kids get the education, not just exploitation? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's easy to point the finger at the university, but at some point you got to point the finger back at some parents, Charlton.
Yeah.
I think the parents have just as much culpability in the exploitation of the kids as the universities do.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to be the guiding focus of your children when they're making a decision on a university.
Right.
It's not up to the university. The university will only make the offer. As a parent, you have to be able to streamline and guide your child in that offer. And as a parent, you need to stay up on top of the academics of your student. Even though they may not be living under your roof, they're still your child. Just like when they were in high school, you didn't follow them to class every day, but you checked up on what their grades were and you stayed in touch with their instructors.
Yeah.
These parents, most of them, Charlton, are sitting there looking as a kid as a 401k plan.
Yeah.
But my son's going to play pro ball someday. He's going to play pro ball. We're going to get this. We're going to get that. They're never talking about what their son's studying in college, what they plan on getting their master's or doctorate in.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that. They talk about them getting to the next level.
Yeah.
So I put just as much onus, if not more, on the parents than what I do against these universities. These universities are factories.
Yeah.
They were existing long before these young players came along, and they're going to still exist once those young players are gone.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes back to the parenting of a child to find out what direction a child is going to go. That's the one thing that we don't have a lot of. You see the parents on draft night when they've gotten all made up because their son is getting drafted in basketball and football.
Yeah.
But where is that parent the rest of the time as far as guiding those kids who don't get drafted?
You know, that's a very good topic. And I love that conversation because I don't want to see the HBCs become like the Negro League in baseball, where it was like a staple for the African-American community. And then it's just gone away because money can influence. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout. And when we come back, I want to talk more about some things that are going on in the history of athletes that came out of the HBCs. And hopefully we can have more success going into the future. We'll be back in just a moment, and we hope that you'll join us as well. All right, Big C, we are back from what's called the Big C timeout. And I really love what we're doing. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. If you have a TV set in your home called Xfinity, Comcast, you can follow Big C Sports. And we really thank our sponsors for all their support. I want to bring this thought to mind because I really want to be a solution. And again, you're going to hear more people talking about that solution. Senator Kevin Parker of New York has proposed a bill earlier this week that would give college athletes the right to sell their own names, images, and likeness. Now, Parker said on Wednesday that he since added an amendment that would require college athletic departments to give 15% share of annual revenue to student athletes, and the revenue would be divided equally among all student athletes who compete for that school. Big C, that's a start in the right direction, because 5 years ago, everybody just said, like Governor Wallace, no, no, no. He's in a good direction, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that would be a correction to all college athletes. You know what happened in the California legislature,
Yep.
where they passed the bill and they got it on the governor's desk waiting on him to sign it. The NCAA injected, please don't do that. Hold off for 3 or 4 years. Let us try to hide some money. Now, if this bill goes through in the state of New York that was introduced by the Senator Charlton,
Yes, Senator Parker.
can you imagine what that would do for college athletics
Yep.
across the landscape?
Yeah.
That 15% of the revenue from these universities, and we're talking universities that make some of them $250 million a
Yep.
year in revenue,
Yep.
that those funds have to be siphoned off and distributed out equally through all athletes within that university.
Yeah.
Football, basketball, track and field, women's soccer, lacrosse,
Yeah.
baseball, everything, Charlton.
Yeah.
That now athletes will get compensated. If this passed in New York, Charlton, it would become a nationwide thing. It would change the landscape of all
It's going to.
sports. But I don't know which direction it would change the landscape in, Charlton. We're talking about the HBCs and the lack of funding that they have.
Yeah.
You're comparing an HBC to a university like Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson.
Yeah.
These universities that have seemed like endless pockets, especially the SEC schools, when Georgia can allocate out $80 million for athletic improvements.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the students are going to get 15% of $80 million. That's a big chunk of change. Now, all of a sudden, I mean, we're going to enter into the level of professionalism. It's going to change the landscape of the NCAA, however it is.
Yeah.
But will all the universities be honest about the revenue that they generate,
Honest,
Charlton?
honestly,
Who's going to monitor
Yeah.
that and say, well, you fell short $5?
Well, I like the conversation, though, because just like with Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, it's not going to be perfect at first. Just like car dealerships, they always make cars better. If you buy a Cadillac of 2019 model, it's a better car than the Cadillac that came out in 2000 because they improved things. So it doesn't have to be set in stone, just like healthcare. But could you imagine, and think about this, we talked about the HBCs coming on after the Civil War, Big C, and now they did it because they wanted to create educational opportunities for black Americans. Now it's the black students. Think about this. It's the black students and the wealth that's made by collegiate sports that has been a big point of exploitation by white Americans, and we know that. It's the black men again and women that are pushing this sea change for economic equality, and it's going to trickle down to the HBCs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it would trickle down to the HBCs, but would this mean that they would recruit less black athletes in the major college because you're going to create an economic advantage for those African-American athletes that are sitting there on the bench? Is that they're going to have the same economical, stance in life that the white society is going to have, Charlton, because they're going to be sitting there earning thousands of dollars as they're going to school, Charlton, over a 4 to 5 year span. This is what the fight back will be, is that we're affording the African-American athletes luxury. That's where the major fight comes, because most African-American athletes in major institutions come from underprivileged areas.
Yeah.
And so they don't have the same economic advantage getting into college. They have to rely on that scholarship.
Yep.
And the fight back is going to be, well, if you're receiving money, then we're going to take some of the scholarship money away from you and force you to pay partially for your scholarship.
Well, I think no matter what side of the table we look at, it's just like civil rights, just like the movie Hidden Figures. And like we talk about all the time, not everybody cares about talking about quality and money and money that's earned from free labor, but it's talking about things that make it a change. And I know you will agree with this, or maybe you won't. But there were a lot of times people would push back in mainstream media. We don't want to talk politics. We don't want to talk anything. Just tell me how big and strong somebody is. Well, Big C Sports did not capitulate to that. We've been big pushing on equality and talking about economics as well as how big and fast somebody is. And now you have United States senators doing the same things and a governor from California. Big C, I think we were doing the right thing. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always time to move forward in things. But, it's not as easy as just say, okay, we're introducing this.
Right.
What are all the tentacles that's going to come out of that? There's going to be extending arms that everybody looks at, and people are going to attack it and try to dissect it. It's never going to be as simple as what we say it is, that, hey, give them 15% of all revenue generated by the department. Because there's always great bookkeeping. Think about the President Donald Trump. He's under audit. So if you're under audit, then I can't disclose to you what I have or where I am financially. Universities will fight back against this, Charlton, because people get paid. And why do you want to take money out of your pocket to pay somebody else? Like I said, if they're going to pay the athletes, I guarantee you they will try to tell the athletes, now you're going to have to pay for your own scholarship. And if that occurs, how disparaging will it be for athletes to go to these universities now because they won't see the money? They have to pay to play sports at those universities.
Well, I think with if they get rid of the good athletes, Big C, they're going to lose gate money, and I don't think that'll ever happen. People are greedy by nature, and when you're used to making $500 million in your athletic program, you're not going to turn it around because you got to give away maybe a few $1 million of that. I think the discussion is good, and based on that discussion, I want to and again, Senator Kevin Parker, I appreciate people like that because as a smart man and also California Governor Gavin Newsom, if you benefit the student athlete, you also benefit Black Americans. People talk about reparations and whatever they want to talk about, but it's good to see some of that happening. And speaking of that, I want to just get your thoughts on when you think about the complete brief history of the Hbcu, the quarterbacks picked in the NFL draft, guys that actually made it to that next level, Big C, that went on to earn money to play professional sports. Eldridge Dickey, Tennessee State, 1968. He was the first round, 25th overall pick by the Oakland Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was the start of the run of African-American quarterbacks in the NFL. He was the first African-American quarterback to ever be drafted in the first round by the Oakland Raiders. The ironic part, Charlton, they drafted a quarterback in the second round that same year who ended up winning a Super Bowl and ended up in the Hall of Fame, and that was Kenny Stabler out of Alabama.
Well, that's amazing because progress is always there. I mean, we just got to talk about it and keep talking about it because there are good people on all sides. If they know it matters to us, then it'll matter to them, like the Senator Parker, and Governor Gavin Newsom. But if we just say, hey, man, did you see who won the game last night? Can you believe how big and strong that guy is? They'll think we're all dumb, so why would they appease dumb people? I appreciate sports programs that do talk about politics. It shows you're not a sycophant. Big C, Henry Johnson Fisk University, 1967, 12th round, 315 pick overall by the San Francisco 49ers, was switched to defensive back, Big C. Some things haven't changed, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this has been one of the history of African-American quarterbacks coming out of HBCUs, Charlton, because they've been such tremendous athletes. People don't look at them as just a quarterback. They say, okay, we can make an asset out of it. And so many African-American athletes, Charlton, have lost the opportunity to throw the football down the field at the next level.
That's right.
But the San Francisco 49ers that same year, Charlton, also drafted a quarterback in the first round who had won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
A guy named Steve Spurrier out of Florida.
Yeah, amazing. And people know about Steve Spurrier and the Gators down south, Big C. Henry Jackson, Alabama A&M, 1969. He was a fifth round, 110th pick by the former New England Patriots, formerly the Boston Patriots. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was back in the day when you think about a city on the Northeast. Boston was a very progressive city at the time, Charlton. You think about the great Boston Celtics with the run they had with all African-American players.
Yep.
And here are the Boston Patriots at the time, and they were playing football at Fenway Park at the time and drafted an African-American quarterback.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one of the players that I started paying attention to growing up, the great James Harris, Grambling State, 1969, 8th round pick, 192nd pick overall by the Buffalo Bills at that time. Big C, your thoughts?
And James Harris went on in the NFL, Charlton, to prove all the mindset of the NFL wrong, that African Americans could play and dominate their position. He was the first African American quarterback, Charlton, in the NFL to win a division title with the Los Angeles Rams. Subsequently, he got traded the following year to back up Dan Fouts in San Diego and never played again in the NFL.
Anyone backing up Dan Fouts is probably not going to play a lot. Big C, Joe Gillum Jr., Tennessee State, 1972. He was the 11th round pick, the 273rd overall pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, Charlton, they built their organization of the 70s out of the HBCs. When you look at the host of African-American All-Stars that they had on their team, Charlton, they only had 2 African-American players that came from Power 5 conferences. That was Lynn Swann and Franco Harris. Joe Gilliam went on to lead the Steelers to 11-1 record one year when Terry Bradshaw was hurt, only to be replaced by Terry Bradshaw and didn't get a chance to win the Super Bowl for the Steelers.
Yeah, that's amazing when you think about that. And Swan played at USC, and he got let go, forced out of USC. And, of course, you have the great Franco Harris that came out of Penn State, Big C. Matthew Reed, Grambling State, 1973, 10th overall pick. 10th round, 240th overall pick. And that was by the Buffalo Bills, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Buffalo Bills found something they liked in the HBCs, Charlton. They had drafted James Harris, then turned around and drafted Matthew Reed. Reed probably had the strongest arm of any quarterback to ever come out of college. And, not many people know about him because of the time and era that he played in. But there was one time in practice that James Reed threw a football so hard, he split the receiver's hand wide open, Charlton.
Wow.
That's how dominant of an arm that he had.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they invented Stickum to stitch those hands back together, Big C. But he definitely had a strong arm. Parnell Dickinson, Mississippi Valley State. That's Jerry Rice alma mater, 1976, 7th round, 183rd overall pick, and went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Parnell Dickinson. I mean, this was the quarterback. This was the first African-American quarterback to start a game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody thinks that it was Doug Williams. But when Parnell Dickinson was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this name again that we talked about earlier, Steve Spurrier was the quarterback for Tampa at that time. He got hurt, and Parnell Dickinson took over and became the first starting African-American quarterback in Tampa Bay history.
That's just amazing knowledge. You don't hear that on mainstream radio and TV shows. You just don't. You might start hearing more because other programs are going to try. They're going to try to pay attention to the HBs, the black college programs, maybe a week or two, and then they'll go by the wayside. But we'll keep doing it every week. Big C, Doug Williams, Grambling State, 1978, first round, 17th overall pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he was not their first black quarterback. Big C, your thoughts?
He was not their first black quarterback, Charlton, but he was a quarterback that everybody recognized as a black quarterback with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Being drafted in the first round that year, Charlton, he was the first quarterback taken in the draft.
Yeah.
And Tampa was a very struggling organization at that time. He went on to the USFL. Everybody knows about the end of Doug Williams' career, finishing up with the Washington Redskins with a Super Bowl victory down in San Diego.
And cost him his job because he made Elway look bad. I know people don't. They think, well, how you throw 5 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl and you don't get another snap? Doesn't make any sense. Big C, Joe 747 Adams, Tennessee State, 1981. He was a 12th round, 322nd overall pick, also by the San Francisco 49ers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, San Francisco 49ers, Charlton, took some chances with some African-American quarterbacks. I remember Joe Adams well. This was a guy that could sling a football. He and Joe Gilliam were of the same stature.
Amazing.
You think about when Joe Adams left college, Charlton, this guy had more touchdown passes than anybody in college football history, but it wasn't enough for the NFL to stick.
That's amazing because if you talk about it, and people might wonder, and all we're saying is Google. All we're saying, anyone listening in the sports universe, Google what we're saying about the historically black universities and their college programs, whether it's sports or just academics. And my purpose, and Big C, you can speak for yourself, corporations, pay attention to how you can fund these programs, because a lot of the people that play in these programs, they're going to become household names. We're already going down a list of people who become household names, and you did not know where they came from. So if you put your money into these black college programs, the same way you're doing the mainstream programs, then you'll have more people buying your product. That just makes more sense, Big C. J. Skywalker Howard University, 1994, 7th round, 197th overall pick by the New England Patriots. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the New England Patriots is notable for taking quarterbacks in the late rounds, Charlton, and making them a success. When he went to the Patriots, he was backing up Drew Bledsoe for a couple of years, but a few years later, Charlton, they drafted a guy with the 199th pick.
Yep.
And we know where history has taken him.
Yep, that's very true. Now here's a person that also played in the Super Bowl. And if you're corporate American, and you'll see all the corporate American companies they will cover the mainstream college programs, what we call the blue bloods. You'll see them advertising on the programs, and that's where that TV money comes from. But if you're also a corporation, and your goal is your bottom line, how do you get more money? How do you sell more products? There's a gold mine in the historically black universities. There just are. But if you don't put your money behind them and get them on TV, then you'll have fewer people to buy your products, Big C. Steve Air McNair, Alcorn State, 1995. First round, third overall pick by the Houston Oilers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Steve McNair was a legend at Alcorn State, Charlton, the first-round draft pick of the Houston Oilers before they became the Tennessee Titans. He was Superman before Cam Newton became Superman, Charlton. As a senior in college, 5,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing.
Yep.
Leading the Tennessee Titans to a Super Bowl, Charlton, coming up a yard short against the Los Angeles Rams. His number was retired this last year by Alcorn State and is being retired by the Tennessee Titans. The late Steve McNair personified what black quarterbacks were, Charlton.
Yeah, a guy that was as good as anybody, but he did it at a lower level. And because he was so phenomenal, Big C, mainstream TV got behind it. So they would air some of their programs on television, and they would have sponsorship, and that sponsorship TV revenue, it goes to that athletic program. And that's how the Blue Bloods got the money. It's TV, not because so many people showed up at their games. It all works together. Jawan Snyder, is FAMU, F-A-M-U. In 2006 was a sixth round, 206 overall pick, Big C, out of a HBC, and it was by the San Diego Chargers back in the day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, one of the signature things that we have here is that NFL wants to go to the HBCs and draft the players low. They know that they have the ability and the talent to play in the NFL.
Yep.
So they want to spend late-round draft picks on black quarterbacks, but spend high-round draft picks on white quarterbacks. Lessens the ability and opportunity for that black quarterback to play. He spent 2 years with the San Diego Chargers in a backup role, Charlton, but the quarterbacks that he had to compete against, Stan Humphrey, then Drew Brees, did not give him great opportunity to play.
No, that's the case for a lot of people, Big C. And so I just want to bring this up because, I love that we've been doing this. We've been doing this the last couple of years, but I want to make sure that we become part of that solution. Not just say they won't put us on TV or they don't cover. Well, Big C Sports is a program that you can just Google it. There will be more people that follow it, guarantee it. Tavares Jackson, Alabama State, 2006, second round, 64th pick overall by the Minnesota Vikings, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Minnesota Vikings, Charlton, had a run on African-American quarterbacks, if you recall, the great Randall Cunningham, who set the scoring record for the NFL's offense, when he was there. Then they brought in Dante Culpepper, who could heave the ball down the field, but a horrific knee injury shortened his career.
That's right.
They went out and drafted Tavares Jackson, Charlton. They brought him in. He found success with the Minnesota Vikings, led the team to the playoffs, Charlton. But as it became evident with, black quarterbacks in the NFL, that something you didn't want to have is a lot of success for him. And he became a journeyman after that. His last stop was in Seattle.
Yeah, well, we know it's important, and I love talking about that. And if we want to be a part of that solution, I also want to look at some of the things as we talk about the lack of TV advertising, and you juxtapose that to some of the bigger games coming up, this weekend. And I know, as you say, Big C, it doesn't happen overnight. These things take time. But you got to pay attention to anything before it changes. We have number 7 ranked Notre Dame. They're at number 3 ranked Georgia, the Bulldogs and the Fighting Irish. Now, Georgia, I think they're right around 14 point. I don't know if that might be too much, though, but who knows. But they have 14-point spread in this game. The game Saturday, Brian Kelly, Notre Dame's head coach, is 1-7 versus top 10 ranked teams since being at Notre Dame. 1-7 is not good, but something tells me the point spread will not be 2 touchdowns. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at what Georgia has done, they've been a dominant physical team, and Notre Dame struggle with teams like that. You think about Jacob Fromm, the quarterback at the University of Georgia. This is a guy that's run off 2 elite quarterbacks that are playing around the country right now, Justin Field and Jacob Fromm at Ohio State and Washington. Georgia is going out. This is a physical team that will impose its will on Notre Dame. You saw what Notre Dame did last year against Clemson in the playoffs. They went out and laid an egg against a top-ranked team. They were only able to score 3 points. When you look at Georgia, Charlton, they have that same type of team that Clemson had last year. They possess a lot of physicality. we will find out if the SEC is for real, because if Notre Dame loses this, all of their playoffs hopes are out of the window.
I know they played a couple of years ago up in South Bend, and I think it was about a 2-point game in that. But so we'll see. That's still a big spread. Also, another big game, and again, this is why we talk about the black colleges. They need the same thing that the mainstream programs get. It's just called TV revenue, Big C. That's what it's called, and we can get it there if we bring attention to it. Number 11, Michigan. They play at number 13, Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's playing better than number 13 in the country. It's at Camp Randall Stadium. Michigan struggled early in the season versus Army. They got out with an overtime victory at home. But Wisconsin, they've been so dominant. At home, look for Michigan to make a quarterback change during the game from Shane Patton to Dylan McCaffrey. But I think Wisconsin, no matter what happens in this game, they're going to be a threat to win that Big Ten. Big C, your thoughts?
They are, Charlton. They have a dominant running game with Jonathan Taylor. They have improvement at quarterback. Michigan, this is a win that they desperately need. If Michigan loses this game, there's going to be a lot of rumbling in Ann Arbor about Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
He might be looking to move out to the West Coast to the Pac-10. There's going to be some openings at the end of the season out there, Charlton. But I see Shea Patterson has not stepped up at the quarterback position at Michigan. This is his third year at the helm after transferring in from Mississippi, Charlton, and he has to get it right. Michigan was playing strong last year until they ran into Ohio State. But since that game, Charlton, they haven't played great football. I like Wisconsin at home against the Wolverines.
Yeah, I like them too, Big C. So I want to take a look at our bottom 10 programs. I know people say, why put money into the historical black college universities? Well, many players in the NFL have come from those great conferences, Big C, the SWAC and MEAC. But I want to look at some of the bottom 10, or say Big C's bottom 10 college football programs. And these programs are what they call these blue blood programs, where they get big TV sponsorship. If you can sponsor programs that don't win, you can sponsor a lot of the HB programs, historical black college programs, that produce a lot of major talent. In the top 10, it's an oxymoron, but the top 10 worst team, let's say Vanderbilt 0-2, Oregon State coming in at number 9 0-2. You could throw in South Alabama, they're 1-2. I would be surprised UCLA 0-3 if Chip Kelly's still around after this season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if he'll be around after midway point in the season, Charlton. UCLA being 0-3, this is the worst start in the school history, getting off to an 0-3 start.
Yeah.
And it's an embarrassment to that great university out there on the West Coast. I mean, a lot of people thought bringing in Chip Kelly that he would reincite what he had up in Oregon. But you can't attract the kids down there that you attracted in Oregon because the landscape has changed.
Yeah.
You don't have Uncle Phil Knight sponsoring everything that you got going
Uncle
on.
Phil,
and you don't have a campus on stadium. And plus, they just have no talent.
Speaking of Phil Knight, there's a wealth of people in the South that buy Nike programs and Nike products. They just do, Big C. What a great place to put his money and invest in some education, maybe even help upgrade some athletic facilities. They're buying your shoes anyway. Imagine how many more people would buy your product if you supported those schools too, Mr. Knight. Big C, Rice University, they're 0-3. UNLV is 1-2. Tennessee and UCLA, it's amazing to see them on this list. Also 1-2. New Mexico State's 0-3. Akron's 0-3, and UMass is 0-3. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's amazing, as you say. You look at some of these Power 5 conference teams that they've made lists as the worst team in America. Yeah. And things are not going to get any better for them as you look and go down the slate. You know, you got Oregon State and UCLA from the Pac-12. Who would have thought that anybody would have ever thought about those programs being in the bottom 10 of the country? And then the University of Tennessee being in there. And this is a team that has won a national championship in its past.
Yeah.
And you've had UCLA compete in Rose Bowls, Charlton. So it's strange how the mighty has fallen, but the landscape, I know we talk about the HBCs, but even in these heritage universities, they're going through struggles.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you some guys who are not going through struggles. And again, Big C Sports, and you can Google it. We want to make sure that we ask corporate sponsors to pay attention to historical black universities in college, not just for the sports programs, but that's part of it too, because they buy your shoes too. They buy the soap, they buy the cars, they buy the homes, they open up banking accounts. I mean, it's okay to go put money into those programs the same way you do for the programs that we're mentioning that are some of the worst programs in the country that you pump money to. Big C, NBA owners, they're not hurting at all. And you think about they're getting into the alcohol business. The Hornets owner, Michael Jordan. Celtics owner, I think it's White Grossbeck. Lakers owner, Jeannie Buss. Bucks owners, Wes Edens. They launched a new tequila line, and prices go from $70 up to $1,600. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the $1,600 would probably last me for a year of libations talking instead of just one bottle.
Yeah.
But you think about this. This is called diversity. This is called, what you do when you want to move along in America.
Yeah.
You take chances with opportunity.
Yep.
And here are these NBA owners. I mean, there's also rules in the NBA about controlled substance.
That's right.
But the owners now are getting in the business. They're going to reach their money in any way that they can. But you think about somebody paying $1,600 a bottle. If you're Mike Jordan, if they want to sell out every batch of that $1,600 bottle, Charlton, all they got to do is have Mike autograph the bottle.
Yeah. There's a stupid movie. It has Jennifer Lopez and a couple other hootie-tootie women. And it's a real talk. They talk about how they can. There's a book called, Blank Tactics. It's the Asian and O Tactics, and how they get men, dumb guys, to spend $1,600 on liquor. They drug these guys up and then use their credit cards and charge up money. It's a real thing that's happening to a lot of people. If a guy's spending $1,600 on a bottle of libation, he's probably one of those guys, Big C. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 network for podcasts in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. If you have Xfinity Comcast, you can follow Big C Sports on TV. I really appreciate the apps by Alexa and Google. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and then our program will start. And I really appreciate the growth we're having with Big C Sports. Big C, I know there's so much to talk about as we close out today's show, and I really hope that Bruce Bochy can celebrate 2000 tonight in Boston. But sometimes we talk about African-American players in race and big business and sports and how we're embraced when we have a uniform. But sometimes when you exercise your right to want to be like the mainstream business people, you get ostracized. Jacksonville Jaguar defensive back, all-pro defensive back Jalen Ramsey, he's demanding a trade out of Jacksonville after a blow-up, on the sidelines with his coach. And every player at some point in time has argued with their coach, because you know that's true, Doug Marrone, during the weekend in their loss to the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans are demanding a first and second round draft pick. That would be the best landing spot for Ramsey. Why is he under so much flack for exercising his right to say, I want to play elsewhere, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing when an African-American athlete demands a trade not wanting to be in a market. If you go back to a quarterback that was just benched yesterday in New York, Eli Manning. When he was drafted by the San Diego Chargers, he said, I don't want to play in San Diego. That's just my preference. I don't want to play there. You go back even before him, John Elway, when he was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, said, I'm never going to play a game in Indianapolis. Both of those quarterbacks got their way. But it was amazing. They were both white, and they were exercising their right to work where they wanted. The white players have had a right to work where they wanted to in professional sports. As you get an African-American athlete demanding trades, all of a sudden he's uppity, he's cockedy, he's selfish. They've never said that about a white player demanding a trade. Jalen Ramsey, it's become dysfunctional down in Jacksonville with him and the organization. Move the player on. He's going to go out and play. Will he help the team? I'm not always sure about that because of where his mental stance is right now. But it's best for both parties, Charlton, the organization and the player, to move him along.
Part ways.
I think, if you look at a landing spot for Jalen Ramsey, I think the most fitting place would be in Kansas City. With a coach like Andy Reid, who has played with players that needed to be restructured. You think about Michael Vick, the job that he did with him. You think about Deshaun Jackson, how he got him refocused. So this is a coach, Andy Reid, who has had some hard-time players come into him in Philadelphia and Kansas City, Charlton, and made success stories out of them.
Well, even Steve Young, I believe he's well-educated out of BYU. I remember he signed with the LA Express for $40 million, ended up being on the staff. The team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't want to be there anymore and got traded out to San Francisco. And he's someone as erudite as Steve Young is saying they don't want to see the NFL become like the NBA. And he didn't say the whole thing that I'm going to say, But when black men exercise their right to be intelligent and go where they want to go, people say, well, that's a problem. We can't let that happen. I think that's crazy. You can go wherever you want to go. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Charlton, I'm watching this epic battles in baseball the rest of the week where I'm watching these home runs being launched out of the ballpark still at a record rate. I want to see what the final tally is going to be in baseball this year.
Yeah, I would love to see it too. And you can also find out about the tally every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.